It's good to be in the house of God on a Sunday evening. There's not as many here, but there's a lot here that wasn't here this morning, and I'm glad that you're here tonight. And I'm glad that you've decided to make that choice to come out and to give your time to the Lord tonight. And I trust that you'll be blessed, and I trust that the Lord is going to take control tonight, and the message will be from Him. So if you would, go ahead and turn with me to Matthew chapter 14. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 14. I'm going to begin reading with verse 22. Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. When you find it, you can stand with me. Lord, have your way. And it says, "And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid." You may be seated. I've titled the message tonight, Get Into a Ship. Get into a ship. It says that there in that 22nd verse, it says, Jesus straightway constrained his disciples to get into a ship. So the first thing I want to say here is that God tells us to go. God will give us a command of what he wants us to do. And we see that the disciples were listening to that command when Jesus said, Go get into a ship. And he said to go before him unto the other side while he sent the multitudes away. So the first thing, and if anyone, when in ministry, God will call you to a ministry, and a lot of times you jump on board, but you don't know the extent of all what you're going to come into contact with in the process of that. Every day is a learning experience. Just like as a Christian, when you first give your heart to the Lord, every day is a learning experience for you. Every minute and every hour, you have to learn to trust the Lord for everything that's happening, for everything that you do. You have to trust Him that He's going to take you through. Because it's not what we can do of our own selves, but it's what Jesus can do for us. It's not what we can do at any point. There's never anything that we can do for our own selves. And so many times we have to remind ourselves, and I think God uses things to remind us of that too, that it's Him, it's not us. But the very first thing there is that they were told to go, to get into a ship and to go. And I know that whenever you listen to God's call and you get into that ship, whatever it may be, that you're starting a new voyage there. I know that there's some in here that have got into their ship and they begin to go. But we'll get into the next portion of this. Says we become troubled in fear. How many times, as soon as God begins to do something, the devil comes in and tries to trouble and fear us? Tries to cause us to have pain and discomfort, and tries to keep us from doing that thing that we begin to do. When we get into that ship, the devil will come and begin to try to trouble us and cause us to have fear and cause us to not want to continue with what we're doing. But we have to remember that it's not about us and it's not about that thing in the middle. It's about that we have a duty and we have something God has called us to do. So it's not about the issues that arise, but it's about doing what the Master has asked you to do. Amen? So listen, let's look at verse 24. It says, But the ship was now in the midst of a sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. In the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, and saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. I like that. If you can imagine having walked with Jesus all this time, the disciples having seen what Jesus is doing, all the miracles that Jesus had done up to this point, and you can imagine being with him and seeing all these different things that he's done. And look at it says when the winds came up, and it says that they were tossed with waves, and the wind was contrary, and they see Jesus goes walking on the sea, and what do they say? Well, it has to be a ghost. Now, what sense does that make? What sense would that make when they've been with Jesus the miracle worker. They've seen things that he's doing. How many times in their life do you think they've seen a ghost? Or they've seen a spirit walking on the water? But here this night, that's their first conclusion. Oh, it's got to be a ghost. Oh, I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. It's Jesus walking on the water. All the miracles that they've seen, and so their first inclination is, well, that's got to be a spirit walking on the water. So they were fearful. They cried out in fear, which that would be scary. You're in a storm, you're in a boat, and you see something walking out, that would be scary. How many would agree that would be a little scary? If you've seen something walking on your pond in the middle of the night, you'd probably be a little alarmed by that, I imagine. Oh, yeah, it's an otter. Yeah, we'll send Cody out there right away for that one. But don't tell him I said that. But, yeah, that's what they were doing is they, I think about all the things that they had seen, all the things that they'd witnessed Jesus doing, and their first inclination is this. But Jesus says that, be not afraid. He said, be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. Now, do they believe that? Well, Peter, let's see what Peter says. Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou. Lord, if it be thou. So even though they've been with Jesus, they see what Jesus does, they see someone walking on the water, and Jesus says, don't be afraid, it's me. And Peter says, are you sure, Lord? Are you sure that that's you? Well, what makes sense there? See, that's how our minds work so often, I think, is we see the worst of things. We see the worst in things. We see that when we should be seeing something incredible and it's happening before our eyes and wait and see what God's about ready to do, instead we see the boogeyman coming after us. And Jesus says, no, it's I, be not afraid. And we say, well, I don't know. Let's make sure about this. So Peter says there in that 28th verse, he says, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. Even though Jesus said it was him, Peter's still wondering. We do this so often. Now, let's read on there. It says in the 29th verse, he said, come, Jesus said, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. So now he's starting to get it. He's walking on the water to go to Jesus. He's starting to believe that maybe what he said is probably true, because at this point he's stepping out. He's saying, yeah, this is pretty nice. He's starting to take some steps. Say, how about that? And this is how Peter walks. He kicks his legs like this, of course. But he starts to walk out there, and of course we see that that's a miracle in itself. We just see one after another things that God is doing that doesn't happen every day. And Peter begins to walk out there, and he's saying, yeah, this is pretty good. And then, but what happens? The same thing that happens to us. It says in verse 30, when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. But at least Peter knew the right thing to do whenever he realized his problems were happening. At least he knew that like us, whenever we fail and we decide, we're doing so good sometimes, we think. And it says, be careful lest you fall. If you think that you're standing, be careful lest you fall. And I think that's what happened here, is Peter thought, I'm doing pretty good. This isn't bad. This really is Jesus. I'm walking, but then the wind comes out and the things begin to happen and he begins to sink. But Jesus was there, and Peter knew that he could cry out to the Lord. And he said, Jesus, save me. He said, Jesus, save me. He knew what he needed to do in that moment. Even though all these things were happening, he knew what he needed to do in that moment. Now, he was almost in a worse situation, because at least at the start, he was in the boat. At least at the start of this thing, he was in the boat. Now he's out of the boat and he's sinking. But he knew, Lord, save me. He knew, Lord, save me. And it says, immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore dost thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth, thou art the Son of God. This is just a simple process, but it shows us how our mind works. How our mind works, that even though we trust in the Lord, as soon as the things begin to rise up around us, we begin to doubt, don't we? We begin to doubt and say, well, Lord, is this really what you want me to do? God, you sent me out in this boat. Now look what's happening to this boat. I'm out here in the middle of the sea and things are beginning to go horribly wrong. And isn't this what you told me to do? Isn't this what you told me to do? And God begins to come to us, tries to reassure us, and we say, oh, I don't know if that's God talking to me or not. I don't know if that's him or not. And so he has to go out of his way to confirm those things to us, to begin to speak to us, and he has to get it through my thick head to be able to say, yes, this is what I sent you out to do. This is what I sent you out to do. But so often we get scared. You know, this reminds me of every time I read these stories of the when they're out in the sea and the storms and things, I always think of and I shudder to say the name almost, because when I vowed that I would never return to this place, which was Hootontown, is one of the worst experiences of my life when I was out in my own boat in Hootontown. And let me tell you about Hootontown. You know, of course, we like to go fishing at night. And so this was a few years ago, and I loaded up my old 12-foot boat, and I just got a motor. And Jerry, I think you remember that motor maybe. And I just got a motor, and I thought, boy, this thing is going to be nice, because Hootontown has some faster water that comes through there. And I was going to take it downstream and then come up later the next morning. I was going to fish all night and then come up the next morning, and it was going to be great. I used to have this little trolling motor and a couple paddles, and that's kind of what I used initially. But now I've got the power here. So I'm going to take this motor out, this little 5-horse, and it's going to, we're going to have a good time fishing. So we go down, and we fish all night. I mean, we went down and down and down. Now, that was our first mistake. We shouldn't have went downstream. We should have went up. But we went down and down and downstream. We probably went about 6 or 7 hours in at this point. And the sun starts coming up. And we say, okay, well, we should probably maybe consider turning around. But the fish are biting now when the sun starts coming up. Why waste all that wonderful fishing time? So let's take a little bit more time. So we stay a little bit further, and it gets closer to 8, 9, 10 o'clock, and we say, well, the fish are kind of dying now. We did catch a lot of fish that night. We caught so many fish. Okay, we didn't catch that many fish, but we did catch some fish. And so we decide, well, we should probably turn this boat around and start heading back upstream, because, we don't want to get too far down and not be able to get back up. So, okay, we'll fire that baby up. So I start that thing up, and we get ready to go, and it's not 5 minutes. I hit a big rock. And my prop is no longer on my motor. And it's wide up. We're not going anywhere. We're floating downstream. And I'm thinking, oh no, this is not good. So I put in the trolling motor. And this is where bad gets worse, because the battery's dead in the trolling motor. And I said, well, this is wonderful. We're just going to have to paddle this thing back up the stream. And I don't know, we're probably 50 miles away from the truck by now. And so here we are. We're out there. We don't have a motor. We're way downstream. We're miles and miles away. We didn't catch that many fish. We caught a few. And then here I have no motor, and we got to get upstream. And then what happens? The rain. No one checked the weather. We stayed out too long. No one checked the weather. Here comes the rain. And it's not just a little rain. I mean, if you look up, you're drowning. You're like the turkey, you don't have enough time to not drown. As the rain's coming down, the lightning starts striking. And we're saying, we have got to get out of this boat. This is horrible. We got to get out of this boat in a hurry. And so here's all this lightning. It's all around everywhere in the rain. You can't see. It's like you're looking through a sheet of plexiglass or something. It's so thick out there raining. And so we jump out of the boat, and we start pulling the boat. We got to walk upstream with this boat now. We got to get home. It's starting to get cold. No one checked the weather. We don't have a motor. This boat's heavy. It's loaded down. We got 2 motors, but they're not doing us any good. Now we got to get out of this boat, because we don't want to get struck by lightning. Here comes the storm. It's a deluge. It's a hurricane. I didn't know that Missouri had hurricanes, but here it comes. And we begin to pull this boat up, and there's 3 of us, and we were a sorry sight. I'm telling you, there were shirts tied to our heads. We looked like Rambo going up the river, and here we get to this place, and there's a docking place. And we say, yeah, that's where we're going to go. We're going to put this boat up against this one little area. We can get up in there, and then all our problems will be solved. We're going to get to the road, and we're going to get out of this place finally. So we pull the boat up there, and as soon as we get out of that boat, what happens? A pack of wild dogs. I'm serious. A pack of wild dogs. They were tame but wild, and this was somebody's house, and they were protecting this house. So it's bad, but it gets worse, because here's these dogs, and I'm telling you, I'm cornered up. Here's 3 dogs, and they're all barking at me. And I'm saying, what do we do now? I don't know what we do now. I'm freezing, it's raining, there's lightning, the river's rising, we're going to have to swim the boat out of here, and we have no way out. So we say, all right, I'll distract the dogs. So I'm distracting the dogs. I don't know what I did. I was maybe doing the Peter walk with them, trying to keep them. And here they come. And so my buddy, he runs up the road, and he tries to he says, I can't see anything up there. This is the longest driveway I've ever seen. So I said, fine. I said, you know what, I'm just going to call the sheriff's department. I don't know what else to do. I'm going to get us out of here, because if we stay here, we're going to die. At least I thought. I'm going to get ate by dogs. I'm going to drown. Somebody's going to get struck by lightning. We've got to go. And so I called the sheriff's department, and I said, hey, there's 3 wet guys at some house, and you need to come pick us up because we're both stranded. And they said, okay, well, where are you? And I said, if I knew that, then, that would be a good start. So here they come. I just had a little bit of battery on my phone, and they come and picked us up, and they took us to our truck. And it seemed like it was forever away. And there was 3 of us crammed in the back of a little bitty patrol car. It might as well have been a Miata, because the other guys were huge. And so here I am smashed in the back of this patrol car. I'm wet. There's shirts tied around our heads. We're like Rambo. We just carried the boat up. We just about got eaten by the pack of wild dogs, and he gets us to the truck. And so we say, I think I know where the boat is. We bring the truck down there, and my buddy says, well, we don't want to have to carry the boat all the way up that driveway. He drives down. He drives down. It's been raining. Muddy banks don't get slick when it rains. And so what does he do? He gets the truck stuck. So there it is. There we are. We have a truck that's stuck. We're wet. We're cold. We're ready to die. We've been up for 27,000 hours, it feels like. We didn't catch very many fish. And here we are. We got 2 motors. We got a boat loaded up, but we cannot go anywhere. Can't go anywhere. So the next 5 hours were spent with ratchet straps on trees trying to help this truck get out of here. But I say all that to say this. That was a bad night. And so I don't discredit them whenever these disciples begin to get scared of what was going on around them. I don't discredit them whenever it says that they became fearful. Because I'm sure that situation was probably horrible. And there may have been some of them that said that vowed they'll never go back to that place that they was at. They may say, I'm never going back there ever. Because I tell you, I'll never go back to Hootontown. I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to talk about it. But we made it through that. And it wasn't about all the stuff that was going on. We were just in survival mode there. Because we knew that the end point was we want to get home. We want to get home. It'd be so nice just to get home. It'd be so nice just to get home. I don't even care if I have to leave the boat there. We just want to get home. And I think that's where they were at this point. They were discouraged. They were fearful. And they see Jesus walking on the water, but they're so frightful and all the things that are going on around them that they just weren't sure that was him. And so I understand that, yes, they would be scared in that moment, but think of all the things that they had seen Jesus do. Boy, I would have loved to see Jesus walking out on the waters of Hootontown that day. I would have loved that deliverance that day, but it didn't happen. Because I needed to be able to tell you that story tonight, I suppose. I don't know why that happened. It was probably my own stupidity for not, planning things better. But the whole thing is that we made it through that, and it was because there was a bigger purpose. And one of these days, we're going to get home. There's a bigger purpose than the struggles that you have today. There's a bigger purpose than what we have going on around us. We can't focus on all the things going on around us because we got to get home. We got to tell others how to get home. There's other people that are stranded out there that need help. We got to be focused on them, not what's going on around in our own little bubble. We got to realize that there's others out there that need help, that are fearful, they're afraid, and they need some guidance. They need to know that Jesus is there to say, be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. Look at this other thing here, which I think is incredible. Just before they go out in this boat, Jesus feeds 5,000 people. You can see that right there in verse 21 of Matthew 14. It says he fed 5,000 men besides the women and children, so more than that. And it says in the 20th verse, they did all eat, and they were filled, and they took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. 12 baskets full. So right after this, what is their luggage that they take into that boat? 12 baskets full of fragments from Jesus feeding 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And all the while that they're in this boat, these 12 disciples, there's a basket per disciple. I believe that maybe they had that basket sitting right between their legs as they're rowing. And they're saying, boy, I don't know if we're going to get out of this or not. And what's that ghost out there walking? What's he doing? And there's the remains of that food that they just had. They just witnessed Jesus feed 5,000 people with that. And it's right there saying, God's able. It's right there saying, God's able. What is there in your past when you can look back, and maybe it's been so recent as it's still sitting in your lap, and you can say, God is able. It doesn't matter what's going on around me, but God is able to do what I need him to do. God is able, but not because I need him to do it or because it's about me, but because it's about he's going to get me home. And it's not about the struggles that I have. It's not about anything like that. It's about the fact that Jesus will take us through. No matter the situation, no matter the pain, no matter the hurt, he's able to deliver you, and he will if you trust him. Some of us are a little thicker-headed than others. We need a little bit more information to be able to go, and we start walking, and we see the winds come up again. And even though it was right in that instant, Jesus is walking us on the water, we still struggle. We still fail, but God will always reach down and pick us up. Amen? God will always reach down and pick us up. He sees you where you're hurting. He sees you where your heartache is. He sees you wherever you are. He understands whatever your situation is, and he's there to pick you up. See, Jesus will save you. Jesus will deliver you because Jesus saves. Amen? Jesus saves. It doesn't matter your situation. Jesus is going to lift you up. Jesus is going to lift you up. That's the theme of this message tonight, is that Jesus will lift you up. And not only that, but don't forget to learn the lesson in the meantime. That God's able to lift you up. That God's able to lift you up where you came from. Think of what he's already done for you. I like to say, I started here. This is where I'm at, but I'm not yet where I intend to be. God shows us where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. And it's where we're going. There's everything in between, yeah. There's everything in between. You may have the wild dogs coming up after you. You may be stuck. You may be stranded 5,000 miles down the river. You may feel like all is lost. But Jesus is ready to help you. Jesus is ready to lift you up. Don't forget what he's done for you. Don't forget that he's able. Realize that he can help you no matter the situation, no matter what it is. Just a simple thought. Jesus will lift you up. He has. I'm going to go ahead and have her bring a song. But just remember, if you're having a bad day, think about the bad days that I just told you about. And it'll make you laugh because you weren't there. It'll make you laugh because you weren't there. I'll be sick about it, but it's all right. I'll allow it. And just know that God's there for you. He'll not leave you hanging. Sometimes we feel like he does, but he's always there. He's always there. He's always there for you. If you have a need tonight, I know it's been kind of lighthearted, but that's what the Lord laid on my heart, was to just to encourage, just to lift you up, that God is there for you. So if you have a need, you can bring it to him tonight. He's ready to meet that need, whatever it is. He's here for you. Stand with me.
If we want